Oftentimes when we're asleep, we become aware of a form of attention, which acts like an inner taunting that kind of reveals that there's a secret that's always being unwittingly laid open before your own mind, you know. And as peculiar as our dreams might be believed to be, their essence becomes cracked open and exposed before daytime's waking mirror, and it flowers magnificently as it broadens the scope of one's own self-deception. Which is like very ridiculous sounding. That was when I was still doing a lot of meth, which is not, believe it or not the best decision for maintaining and sustaining a stable mind. So, yeah, just a little reflection on that. Mid-psychosis, I wrote about the revelations. I'm so glad to see the birds talking up in the trees today. They're talking about their relatives. They're talking about the parties that they've all been to. They're talking about the saints that they all knew down through history. They're talking about the revelations. It comes before us all. They keep talking about the revelation talk. They're talking bird talk, talking wise talk, talking soul talk. They're talking very hard and loud. They're talking about the revelations. They like to talk the love talk. They're talking about having fun. They're talking about revelations. They're talking about having revelations and experiencing the revels. They're talking about reveries and the language of those birds, the ones that came before them and the ones that live amongst them. They're talking about the liveliness of each and everything that's alive on this earth. They're talking about the sweet shimmer that's there on the edge. They're talking about sunlight and instinct. They're talking about hunting and the very strong, very acute fear of being hunted. I'm glad to hear the birds talking up in the trees today. I'm glad to hear the trees and the birds talking up in the trees today. I'm glad to hear them talking the bird talk today. They're talking about bird talk, the bird talk version of, you know, birth talk and death talk and all that sort of sunshine and rain talk. They're talking about the magnetic sky and the colors of the sky and the ever-changing sky. They're talking about prophecy and how there's nobody who's ever been here before in exactly this way. They're talking about how you can get around and how you can actually eventually learn to forgive a person when they've done wrong, learn how to reconcile with oneself, learn how to give oneself away. Now they're talking about everything under the sun. They're talking about revelations. They're talking about having revelations, reveling in revelations. They're talking about the revelation that comes down through words. They're talking about the ones that come down through the heart and body and radiate outwards. They're talking about Kundalini awakening. I didn't know about it. It was a new revelation. They're talking about the revelations, prophecies concerning nobody ever making it here before. Surprised to be alive. Talking about revelations that come through music and the rays of the sun. Talking about the revelations of how to fly, where to fly, and when to fly. I'm glad to hear the birds talking up in the trees today. I'm very glad to hear the birds talking up in the trees today. I'm very glad to be alive here today. I'm very glad to hear the birds talking about wings and air being in the trees today. I'm very glad to see God working through the trees today. They're talking about pie. There's so much to hear from birds up in the trees today. They talk a lot of talk, saccharine talk, and keep talking and talking about the beautiful talk of the trees and talking about principles of elevation, talking about blunders of prior styles, talking about the old days, talking about halcyon days of history. They're talking about bird talk. They're talking just like humans talk, but they're doing bird talking talk. They're talking about the sense data from which sweetly saccharine memories of past lives become born, and we live through them, and we live out of them. We move on, and we keep moving in accordance with the town. We keep moving with this bird talk. They're talking small talk, and then they talk more talk, and they keep talking talk. They're so high up in the trees today because I can't really see where they're at. They're just talking the talk, you know. It's like the seasons and the vibes change, and they move through the continents. It's with bird talk. They're talking about the Anthropocene and the apparent decision to forfeit us, and permanently deny seeds of chance, how everything's ending, how it's the carceral finitude of predestination, and it's silenced with pride. They're talking about fluidity that exists through all living things. They're talking about improvisation styles from jazz players and the composers that are so full of precise arrangement. All these classical pieces of music are true classics. Oh, they're talking about everything classic. They're talking about how the spirit within us can animate our body and our language and our inflection and surprise us evermore. They're talking about the characters that they love most from their favorite television shows, how it affirms their vital faith in this world being true. They're talking about cheap and surreal moments where human beings become privy to the participation in lawless, exploitative behavior. They're talking about how this exists within all of us. They're talking about engagements with the supernatural and the grandiose nature of an all-encompassing conspiracy, one which is just one oriented themselves against the world. They're talking about how you have the revelations of a bird, talking about revelations and bird talk, talking jealous talk, talking jelly talk. I can lift my head, forehead fish sharply up. I don't see any birds in the trees. It's just the seasons moving. It's the vibes changing and moving across the continents, talking bird talk. They're talking about bird talk. I'm so glad to hear birds today. I thank God for being alive today. And I thank God for my daughter.